So for example, just to keep it simple for the audience, the 5 whys. So if someone tells you we have a problem with X and you just ask why and they give you an answer, that answer is not the bottom line of why they have that problem.
Right.
So then you're going to have a follow-up
Totally.
question. So, but why are you in this position? Oh, because of this and that. Okay, but why do you think this and that has happened? Well, because the more you dig, the more you're going to get.
It's the more wise.
The more wise you get, and the more you can actually fix the actual root cause of the problem.
Welcome to WITT. Hi, I'm Megan. I talk with founders, investors, and operators working in tech. My aim is to inspire you with their stories and perspectives. Through this podcast, I want to amplify the voice of women working in tech. If you want to support WITT, then make sure you follow us on your favourite podcasting app. Then you won't miss any future episodes. Today's guest is Caroline, a transformation leader and founder of Arcticana. She brings sharp insights into operational excellence and leading change in complex organizations. Let's get started. Hi, Caroline. Welcome to WITT. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I would love to kick off our conversation with a lightning round. Is that okay?
Yes.
Love it. Okay, first question. If you weren't in tech, what would you be doing?
Probably something with NGO and people.
I like it. Nice. Second question. If you could automate one part of your job forever, what would it be?
Generating PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a great one. Good. Yeah. Okay, third question. What is your favorite question to ask someone in a client interview?
What's your biggest headache at the moment?
I like it. Fourth question. What trend in tech or businesses are you most excited about?
Agents in AI, I think is something to look forward to very much.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's a common theme around all. And then what is your favorite Finnish word or phrase?
Interesting. Maybe tervetuloa, because I find actually Finland to be much more welcoming than what people think.
I like it. I love it. Nice. Sixth question. What's something people often overlook in change management?
That 90% of the success comes from preparation.
I like it. What keeps you motivated when a project gets tough?
The fact that I think at the end of the day it's going to make a positive impact in people's life, nonetheless.
Nice. Very kind of humanitarian. I like it. And then what do you believe is the most critical skill for a successful founder?
Active listening.
Do you believe that most people don't do that?
I do believe that people can get very excited when they found a company and then they are very stuck in their ideas. And it can be difficult for them to actually listen what some people are perhaps trying to advise them to help them.
Okay. Question number 9. What's the biggest difference between working in a startup versus a corporation?
Well, I haven't been working in startup very long. So 2 years. Now I'm a solo entrepreneur, so I won't consider myself a startup. But either way, I think you have to be really multitasking and versatile and ready to take on new challenges at a faster pace than perhaps in corporate.
Yeah, makes sense. And final question for the lightning round is, if you had to describe your entrepreneurial journey in 3 emojis, what would they be and why?
Rocket.
Okay.
Money. Or the dollar emoji, whatever it's called. And probably the emoji with the stars in the eyes. And the reason why is because, well, let's say the ramping up of the company was exceptionally fast. Or let's say the ramping up of my services, because I'm just a solo entrepreneur, was incredibly fast. and it has continued to go up ever since I started 2 years ago. Then the dollar sign emoji, that's not about wealth, that's about well-being. So the ability to be able to financially sustain yourself in something that you find fun without feeling that you're trapped is actually something that I find very empowering, especially as a woman. And then the one with the stars in the eyes, yeah, is because most of the days I get up and I'm still wondering, like, am I actually living this life and this journey now?
Okay.
So I'm still kind of like a kid in a candy store.
Starstruck. I like it. Yeah. No, that's
And
really
I
great.
hope that's gonna last for as long as I'm in this journey. So yeah, those would be maybe the three.
Love it. Well, that was really awesome. Thank you so much for answering my lightning round questions. And
Thanks.
let's move on to your journey, right? So you grew up in France, I believe.
Correct.
And how do you think your parents / teachers would describe a young you?
On the parents' front, it's a bit difficult because they weren't really in my life. So perhaps I'll skip that one.
Okay.
But from the teacher's point of view, yeah, I think they would have thought that perhaps I was quite active, bubbly, and semi-bright. I wasn't particularly like a star student or anything, but I was like, let's say, clever enough to get by. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they would think, but I hope some of them would be proud.
That's good. That's good. And let's move on to your career, right? So yeah, I think it's really interesting to talk to someone who's worked in a company for, I think, 10 years it was. You worked at Conne, yes. So what was that like? How did it change over time? How did you grow and develop? What was the experience?
It was a fantastic experience, but to an extent, it's sometimes a bit difficult to talk about it because I've been working 22 years in Finland, but those 10 years are the only ones that people remember. So that's kind of funny in a way. So I was lucky enough to have already like 5 years under my belt in other types of companies. So including Nokia as a subcontractor, which already gave me like very good understanding of what is a major corporation with international operations and this and that. So in that sense, like when I came to Kone, I wasn't like completely green, fresh out of the university, you know. So I had certain knowledge and stuff, but the actual 10 years at Kone were indeed fantastic because it really allowed me to grow beyond. So I think there's a lot of companies where you can hit a glass ceiling quite quickly, but I was very ambitious and I felt that it was a culture and environment where they were fostering hardworking people and really supporting people to like, you know, grow in the career. So it was a really good learning experience from what is the right company culture. And then, of course, from the more like practical aspect of work, I was surrounded by really some of the best people in the business, in both business and technology. And you know, I learned much more about operational excellence, which is one of my favorite topics to discuss. And I got to travel the world. And when I started, I was 28. When I came out, 38. So those are quite formative years in a career, you know.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Getting the chance to have that experience is something I will always treasure.
Do you think living and working in that kind of corporation and that work life helped you in your kind of on your solo entrepreneurship?
Oh, tremendously. I think I've been kind of person that was never seeing entrepreneurship as an option for me, to be honest. But then the accumulation of knowledge from the different companies, not just Kone, but every company I've ever worked in, and this sort of self-learning journeys. I've taken certifications and courses, and I'm quite curious person as well, are the only reason why entrepreneurship has now been possible, because I've accumulated enough knowledge, enough network, and enough perhaps passion or greed and courage that I was actually able to consider entrepreneurship as an option.
Definitely.
So absolutely, it's shaped me to be an entrepreneur for sure.
Yeah. Well, as you said, you love operational excellence,
Yes,
right?
I
So
do.
you could say you're a black belt in that particular topic. So why do you think it's so important for larger companies to be excellent in this area?
To be specific, I'm actually a green belt on paper, but
Okay.
perhaps at heart, I'm a black belt indeed. I just
Okay.
need to find the time to do the black belt certification, but that's just a bit of a joke. You know what? Yesterday morning, I got the absolute privilege and honor to have breakfast with the Wärtsilä company CEO. And Wärtsilä is huge company, like very successful international company, and their CEO is very passionate about operational excellence. So I was what he calls continuous improvement, but essentially is OPEX. And I was very keen to meet him and hear like what's his vision, what's his views, and what does he think. And everything he was saying was boiling down to stuff that I've been also saying for quite a long time now, that in order for companies to perform at their best, they have to put operational excellence at the core of their strategy. Right. And when we're talking about operational excellence here, we're not talking about like having the best, most optimized manufacturing production chain. We're talking about operational excellence as an holistic discipline, which then helps business and technology services and operations and whichever other aspect of the company by really focusing on customer experience and employee experience. And I think those two are really the key to make a company successful. So of course it's very important in corporations. It's actually important in all size companies, to be fair, in my view. So this is really something that I hope more companies in Finland would embrace. I think Kone and Wärtsilä, for example, are really at the forefront. So of putting this core element, and it shows in their results. So it becomes pretty much a competitive advantage against other companies when you're doing it right, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Yes. No, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like a lot of companies don't really understand that kind of principle, even though it's so kind of into their company dynamic, which is really interesting. But let's talk about you guiding really big companies, right? So you guide them on very complicated projects. So by their definition, they are like multi-stakeholders. So how do you set yourself up for the projects and the companies for success? Like, how do you do that?
That's a great question. I just started a new engagement actually 3 days ago with, again, a quite big project with an international company headquartered in Finland. And I was thinking to myself, like, okay, how do we prepare for this one? And in the end, I didn't actually prepare because it's become kind of natural. And I know that sounds a bit pretentious perhaps, but when you've been doing it for so long in so many companies, it just kind of comes naturally. And what perhaps comes naturally for me is that I have the ability to grasp quite a lot of information in a very short amount of time.
Okay.
So I don't spend, eons of times on inductions. Usually I'll understand quite quickly what's the project about, who is involved, what is the different person's roles, what's expected of me, and so on and so forth. So I have the ability to kind of like get on board very quickly, which I think is very important in stakeholder management, because you have to be able to really quickly grasp like what's the situation. And especially as a consultant, I feel that nowadays I have even less time to get on board than what I did as an employee.
Yeah.
So when, the company is paying top dollar to get a consultant on board, then they want you to be like right away in the game and fully operational.
Definitely.
I think that's very important. And then perhaps the second thing is that I've had what I think is a privilege to work in different departments, including IT, including like more process-driven departments and business departments. So I have the ability to talk to different stakeholders in a very different way. regardless if they are internal stakeholders of that company or if they are third-party stakeholders. And it doesn't always end up being pretty, but at least we speak the same language to an extent. So when I do have the opportunity to work with people who are motivated and competent, then I find it quite natural for me to do this multi-layer, multi-stakeholder type of engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Should we talk about your company now, right? So you founded Arcticana, is that the correct way? Yes. In 2023, so pretty recently, I would say. What was the process of founding your own company? Like, how did you kind of prepare yourself? Who did you talk to?
Yeah, great question. So first and foremost, it's kind of a funny story, perhaps, but I have been thinking for a little bit about entrepreneurship, maybe like a year and a half, but I didn't have the product, I didn't have the services, I just didn't know what to do. And then I did one more company as an employee or salaried employee, where I learned, I think, the last bit that was needed for me to jump into the entrepreneurship. So that was great. And when was it? Yeah, end of February 23. I just came home one day, and then one Friday evening, I just started post-its on the wall. And there was, a couple of ideas for services, and then I started putting pricing, and then I started putting stakeholders to contact, and then I started putting a budget plan. And basically by the Sunday evening, I had a wall full of post-it, which had like the whole business model for the company, which is so stupid because I'm a solo entrepreneur. So it doesn't have to be that complex. But in my head, I was kind of like, okay, I think this is it. I need to do this. And then a few days later, I resigned from my post. And so officially, I started the company in June. And if there is any worse time to start a company in Finland, it is June, because then July,
yes,
the whole country stops. So my idea in this like May and June sort of timeline was to meet 30 people in 30 days. And the 30 people that I wanted to meet were people who had been in my past, mentors, colleagues, and such. And also people who were totally new to me. And I, of course, searched specifically, for example, head of agencies, interim agencies that could help me find clients and things like that. And for 30 days, I basically met those 30 people, and I decided to, just introduce my idea, what would be my services, what would be my pricing, what kind of customers I had in mind, how I was going to go about it in September when everybody would be back from the holidays.
Right.
And I don't know why, but this kind of 30 people in 30 days was making it quite concrete. It gave me a personal target, to reach.
A deadline, right? Yeah.
A deadline, exactly, with a concrete KPI, to a key performance indicator to achieve. So I did that, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic because I completely changed my pricing. I redefined my services. I got to meet great new people and such, and without knowing it, having those discussions got me customers.
Yeah.
So out of those, a few actually became Arcticana customers down the line, at least 4. So that was kind of surprising, because when I was in the holiday, or semi-holiday, because I was preparing a lot of things for the company. But let's say when I was off Finland in that July, then I started getting requests and then made a contract. And by the time I flew back to Finland, I started an engagement. And that's how the first customer came. And then one of the agency I had met in June called me in August. They were like, okay, we have a project in September. So then I started project in September and So I think this preparation point was again quite important, that I didn't just start selling or start calling based on what I thought my services should be, what my prices should be. I actually consulted
other people,
quite a lot of people, which ended up being my market. So market research
all works out in the end. That's good.
So preparations and networking was key there.
Definitely. And would you say it was a good experience? I mean, from what I'm hearing, it was definitely a really good
Absolutely
time.
fantastic. Yeah, it was really fantastic because I think especially when someone like me with, I think it was close to 20 years of experience in companies, you're constantly used to have peers that you can benchmark with and you can exchange ideas and you can brainstorm. And when you start up the solo entrepreneurship, on paper, you're supposed to be alone. But I think in practice, you're not. It depends on your own choice who you're going to surround yourself with. So apart from these 2 days or 3 nights that I spent locked into my apartment doing my post-its, everything else from that point forward has been actually a collective journey.
Yeah.
And it still is to this day. I still meet with some of my peers who have started their own consulting business. I still meet with agencies very regularly just to ask how is the market going and stuff. I speak with my customers all the time because I don't have so many customers, which is also a good thing. So I usually have like 2 or 3 maximum at a time.
Yeah.
And I, yesterday we had, for example, a super evening with Kone alumni. So we had like something like 25, 30 people, ex-Kone people, ex-colleagues, where some of them have started companies, some of them are now CEOs, some of them are consultants. So, having this opportunity to constantly exchange with people about the business is very healthy for a solo entrepreneur.
Creating your own kind of community, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, love it. Okay, let's dig into your frameworks, right? So in your prep questions, you talked about lean and the 6 Sigma framework. What is that? Explain that to me. What does this mean?
So Lean and Six Sigma is a framework that has been created essentially for operational excellence, but with a very strong manufacturing flavor to it.
Okay.
And and I'm a green belt of that as an official certification. Yes. That's why I was making a joke about the black belt earlier, because they also have the black belt. But long story short, it's all about reducing waste and continuous improvement, to make it short. I think it's been used for decades by a lot of people in the operations world. So think, production chain and things like that. Yeah. And there is an emergence of people like me, and I think also the CEO of Arcticana, and a few others that actually believe we can apply those principles to many other areas and processes in a company in order for the company to operate at its best. Okay. So it's very much about being the most efficient, having the most loyal customers, having the most engaged employees, best quality, safety, and all kinds of things like that. And within Lean Six Sigma, as frameworks, they give you a whole bunch of tools that then allows you to get to the bottom of things. So, for example, just to keep it simple for the audience, the 5 whys. So if someone tells you we have a problem with X and you just ask why and they give you an answer, that answer is not the bottom line of why they have that problem. Right. So then you're going to have a follow-up question. So, but why are you in this position? Oh, because of this and that. Okay, but why do you think this and that has happened? Well, because, and the more you dig, the more you're going to get to the root cause. The more whys. The more whys you get, and the more you can actually fix the actual root cause of the problem. So this is just one example. There's hundreds of tools available in both methodologies, and I have studied those for many years and read about them, and I even started a community around this whole operational excellence topic. And I find that, yes, there is an emerging group of people in Finland who is really starting to think outside of the box of just the manufacturing or the plants. Yeah. And it's very nice to be able to exchange with them about those practices and stuff, because we realize most of the time it's not about the name of the tool or getting it right, which is very scary usually. Like, people don't like operational excellence because it's quite technical on paper. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's just common sense for many things. So nice to have those discussions with people about how we can solve collectively problems that we are facing quite often in our own companies when we are salaried employee, or in our customer organizations when we are consultants.
Okay. Well, that sounds really interesting.
You should
I really
read up
like it.
about it. It's
I
so
will.
fun.
I was just about to say it sounds really interesting. I definitely will. But now we've entered the part of the podcast which I like to call the zigzag zone. And so I want to know where you're zagging and everyone else is zigging. So you have spent the last month, I believe, working remote in Vietnam. And that does sound really amazing. And I obviously would love to travel next year. So what's an easy way to combine work with travel and, obviously with the different time zones?
Right. So Vietnam was actually a complete holiday, because that was my first holiday in 2 years. I was off. But the last 2 years, I have traveled quite extensively whilst working. So I guess you could call me a digital nomad to an extent. And I've done that even before it was a thing. So well before COVID and so on. Like, I was already working remotely in some occasions, but I've cranked it up, let's say, in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
To my own surprise, at least my clients, they are super open to it. And I think because they are international companies, I never have the whole team of the customer into one location. So we end up being on Teams or Google Meet or whatever you want to use 8 hours a day. And I don't do going to the office to be on a computer for 8 hours a day. That's not me. It's never been me. I really have challenges with that. So I find that actually communicating to the customers before the engagements actually start, that I'm going to be on the road.
Yeah.
And it's then up to them to say yes or no, of course. But if they say no, then they have to find somebody else. It has never happened so far, actually.
Okay.
But if they would say no, then it would be like, bye-bye.
Yeah.
And then I think that the practical aspect of it is discipline. So it requires actually a fair amount of planning, because if you're on the road, and let's say I will typically work like 10 hours per day when I'm like in a normal office or at home office day, which means I can have meeting, and then I have some time off, and then I have a meeting and some other time off, doing some writing or whatever. So the meetings are kind of spread out throughout the day. Whereas when I'm on the road, I usually try to put my meetings within like a 6-hour slot.
Okay.
And then I can just go around the city and have some nice dinner and do this and that and whatnot. And then I may come back to like the presentations or whatever in the evening or the weekend or whatnot. So I organize my days differently, and I usually just block my calendar so that nobody can book anything outside of those 6 hours.
Good idea.
And my partner is actually also an entrepreneur, and he also goes on the road with me, or he's a digital nomad, not only an entrepreneur. And he goes on the road with me, so we have to make sure that we keep those sort of slots kind of comprehensive enough that we don't end up being the both of or either of us on a call from 8 in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening. Otherwise, we might as well stay at home in Finland.
Of course. Yeah, that makes sense.
So it requires to be a bit organized, but otherwise, like, finding the internet and this and that is always something you need to think about and plan for. So there's a bit of an element of preparation, but otherwise, like, the actual work in itself is pretty much the same. Time zones are not necessarily an issue, because totally by accident, I think all my clients, since I started as an entrepreneur, are located in Europe, and their operations are in Europe. So
that does make it easier. Yeah.
That does make it easier. But if I had been working whilst in Vietnam, for example, then I'll just shift my day by 4 hours just to align with the client schedule or time zone. So that would be the way to do it.
Love it. It sounds so simple, but I like it.
I mean, there is some hiccups, in the beginning, like with the internet or this and that, and there's
organizing everything.
Calls of panic.
I like it.
But there's always a McDonald's or a shop somewhere where you can go and get Wi-Fi.
True. Very true. I like it. Very good, useful tips for me as well, because obviously I would like to do the same. But yeah, now it's story time. So I want to know what it's like to be a young foreign female doing both business and technology. Talk me through it.
Yeah, so it's maybe I can start with an anecdote that it was some time ago. I walked into a room for the first time in a meeting where there were 17 gentlemen.
Okay.
I believe 16 of them were Finnish, and
Lovely.
And I think it hadn't been pre-announced that I would be joining that meeting.
Oh, what a nice surprise.
So of course the sort of first thing that came out and was so innocent, God bless them, and not really like mean or anything, was that, oh, are you sure you're in the right room?
Oh, okay. That's nice.
And I was like, yeah, and
pretty sure.
Yeah, my boss at the time had the time to clap back that she's with me before I even had the time to answer, and after that we laughed about the whole thing, of course, but I think it does sort of kind of reflect the fact that it is not so common still to this day in Finland that you have someone who is, I guess, still young. I'm 42 in 1 month, so I'm still kind of youngish. And that has been a long time coming. So I think this whole like foreign female thing, there's been so many times where I was the only female or the only foreigner in the management teams where I was, or even in full departments, it has happened.
Yeah.
So only female, for example, in one department. It's never been an issue for me, but I think this is part of my story that keeps people interested. I get those questions like really often. We don't see this kind of like foreign female in this kind of positions in company XYZ, or we don't see foreign female entrepreneurs who get the financial results that you've been getting, and that's public information, so you can look it up yourself. There is a few of us, so I think this is still the part of the story that is interesting, and at the same time, for me, that's the sad part. There should be many of us. I should not be an exception. I should be the norm. Because the reason why I am where I am today is because I worked hard, because I have been lucky, but also worked very hard around these intersectional topics that are business and technology, which is not so common and gives me an advantage, to be fair. And this is the kind of stuff that we should recognize. So I tend sometimes to feel like I'm a little bit of UFO, because first I have these like identity characteristics, which I can't change. And then I have the competence set, which is also a bit uncommon. I do business transformation, operational excellence, and business technology, like major transformation on technology side. I'm not an expert of everything, but I have a couple of core solutions where I have pretty deep expertise, even on a technical level. So this is not like common. So I end up being this kind of like weird thing that sometimes people are, oh yeah, this Caroline, she's like a bit of a hard to put in a box, if you would. So yeah, I think that's the sort of part that is making me a bit different from the usual trajectory that people have. Which would be like, let's go into one profession, let's stick to that profession, let's stay in one industry or one type of company. And I've said this, I think, in another podcast as well, like it's like I've had so many different lives, but I'm still kind of young. So sometimes I think people are really wondering if I'm actually making it up.
They think you're lying. Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't think so, but sometimes I have people listening and then they're like, how have you done all kinds of different things?
All of this stuff. So, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think this intersectionality stuff is and breaking silos and constantly being in the middle of multiple organized departments within organizations and stuff is kind of like, or industries is confusing for people, but that I guess is my differentiator.
Yeah, no, well, that was really interesting. I loved our conversation. And now we're sadly coming to the end of the podcast, but I do have 3 final questions for you.
Okay.
So the first one is, imagine it's 2035, so in 10 years.
Yeah.
What does your life look like? What does your company look like?
So in 2035, hopefully the company doesn't exist anymore, or at least I'm not in it anymore, and it's then running by itself with an AI. No, I have no intention to be working as a salaried employee or for billable hours until the time I reach retirement. I have no interest in that. I would love to be financially secure enough that I can actually spend time for, voluntary work, or then, a little bit of advising there and there. But otherwise, more like supporting NGOs and things like that. That would be a longer term goal. I've done both in the past, the NGO plus the other type of career, but I find it very difficult now. I just don't have the time, and I didn't have it so much then, but perhaps as I'm getting older, the energy is not the same. So yeah, if in 10 years I could be not working for, or not having to work for money, but just working for really passion projects and missions that are more humanistic oriented, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And second question, how can listeners follow along with your journey?
LinkedIn is, in terms of the sort of professional sharing, is the one where I talk about my events and my projects and this and that. So LinkedIn is definitely the place to find me. And then if people are interested more in the traveling and digital nomad side of things and things like that, I also have a Instagram, very small, not followed by anyone, Instagram account.
Okay, lovely. And then final question, how can listeners be useful to you? So what can they do to help you?
For me specifically, I would say nothing. I'm having it pretty good.
Okay.
It's a positive thing, I'm actually having it pretty good. So if you have any skills or any asset that you think can be useful to someone else in the world, just pass it forward on my behalf and I will be happy. But otherwise, I'm good. Happy to connect.
Lovely. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Megan.
I'm really looking forward to following along with your journey. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this week's show. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, follow us on your favourite podcasting app. Do consider leaving a review as it helps the podcast tremendously.